For over 300 years, one single dynasty absolutely dominated the Indian subcontinent. We're talking about an empire of just staggering wealth, incredible architecture, and, yeah, some pretty ruthless ambition. This is the story of the Mughal Empire. And just to give you a sense of how massive this empire really was, think about this number. At its absolute peak, India under the Mughals was an economic powerhouse, churning out about 25% of the entire world's industrial output, a full quarter of everything made in the world. So that's the big puzzle we're going to tackle, right? How does an empire get that powerful in the first place? And then what causes it all to crumble? Let's dive in and unpack the story of one of history's most incredible dynasties. And it all kicks off with conquest. I mean, the foundations of the Mughal Empire weren't laid with fancy bricks and mortar. Nope. They were laid with the explosive power of gunpowder and steel. See, the Mughals weren't just another army on the march. They were what historians now call a gunpowder empire. Basically, along with a couple of others like the Ottomans, they were early adopters of brand new military tech. We're talking cannons and muskets. This gave them a massive, decisive advantage over armies still fighting the old way. But the beginning was, well, it was messy. The story really gets going in 1526 with a leader named Babur. And this guy had some serious pedigree. He was a descendant of both Timur and Genghis Khan. He used his cannons to smash a much larger army and found the empire. But that victory didn't mean things were stable. His son, Humayun, inherited a pretty shaky kingdom and pretty quickly got defeated and kicked out. He had to spend 15 years in exile before he could finally fight his way back and put the Mughals back on the throne in 1555. So, after that chaotic start, you'd think they'd just be happy to survive, right? Nope. The empire didn't just get stable, it exploded into a golden age. This was the era of the legendary emperors, of unbelievable wealth, and a cultural boom that would really define what it meant to be Mughal. You know, while Babur might have founded the empire, it was really his grandson, Akbar, who built it. This guy was a political genius. He didn't just conquer more land, he created this incredibly modern, centralized government. And he created a new class of nobles who were loyal to him, not to their old tribes. That, plus his famous embrace of religious tolerance, was the real secret sauce to ruling a subcontinent that was so incredibly diverse. Now, this age of splendor hits its absolute peak under Shah Jahan, who you probably know as the guy who built the Taj Mahal. The art, the architecture, it was just breathtaking. But, and this is a big but, there was a dangerous problem growing just beneath the surface. It's summed up perfectly right here. The cost of maintaining the court began to exceed the revenue. Simply put, they were spending way more than they were making. And that's a crack in the foundation that's going to cause some serious problems later on. So, we've seen the glamour and the glory, but how did this massive imperial machine actually run day to day? All right, let's pop the hood and take a look at the nuts and bolts that powered this whole thing. Okay, the secret was this super organized top-down bureaucracy. At the very top, you've got the emperor. Obviously. The whole territory was then sliced up into big provinces, which they called subas. Each of those was then broken down into smaller districts, or sarkars, and those were broken down even further into groups of villages called parganas. This really clear, layered system let them govern a huge, sprawling territory with incredible efficiency. And the fuel for this entire machine? Agriculture. But Akbar introduced a game-changing tax system called zabt. Instead of the government just taking a chunk of your crops, they demanded payment in cash, specifically in standardized silver coins. This was huge. It forced every farmer to take their crops to market and sell them, which basically plugged the entire rural economy into a vast, monetized network. And the results of this system were, well, they were pretty amazing. I mean, look at this breakdown. Agriculture, no surprise, is the biggest piece of the pie at 52%. But look at manufacturing, 18%. For a pre-industrial society, that is a really big number. It's actually a bigger share of the economy than it was in British India centuries later. So this wasn't just a farming empire, it was a workshop pumping out goods for the whole world. Of course, no golden age can last forever. After the empire stretched as far as it could go, it began this long, slow, painful decline. So, what went wrong? Let's take a look at why it all started to unravel. You know, you can almost see the entire story just by comparing two emperors. On one hand, you have Akbar the Great. He was all about bringing people together, he promoted religious tolerance, and he even got rid of a tax on non-Muslims called the jizya. Then you have his great-grandson, Aurangzeb. A completely different approach. He was a very strict Orthodox Muslim who brought that tax right back and spent decades fighting these incredibly expensive wars that drained the treasury and angered a lot of his subjects. After Aurangzeb's incredibly long reign, we're talking 49 years, when he finally died, the whole thing just fell apart. The stability he represented was gone, replaced by pure chaos. His successors were weak, they didn't last. I mean, get this. In the year 1719 alone, 4 different guys sat on the throne. That kind of instability just led to endless civil wars, and powerful local leaders started acting like they were kings of their own little territories. At this point, the empire was really just a shadow of its former self. And then came the 2 final knockout blows. In 1739, a Persian ruler named Nader Shah swept in and sacked Delhi, stealing the treasury and completely shattering what little prestige the Mughals had left. The empire just sort of limped on after that until the British finally and formally dissolved it after the Great Indian Rebellion of 1857.
But here's the thing. The story doesn't really end in 1857. Because even though the political empire was gone, the cultural footprint of the Mughals is still deeply, profoundly part of South Asia today.
I mean, just think about it for a second. That delicious Mughlai food, that's a blend of their Central Asian roots and local styles. The languages of Hindi and Urdu, they grew out of the mix of Persian and local dialects spoken in the Mughal courts. And the architecture, well, the Taj Mahal, the Red Fort, these are global icons. Even things you might not expect, like Palwani wrestling, have Mughal roots. Their influence is just everywhere. It's such a powerful reminder that even when empires fall, their legacies, their culture, can transform the world in ways that last for centuries. History isn't just something in the past. It's in the food we eat, the words we speak, the buildings we admire. The empire is gone, but the Mughal world is absolutely still with us. So what part of it do you see?